Picture every store in your town shutting its doors for 7 straight days. What single item would haunt people for not grabbing beforehand? It isn't always fresh meat, milk, or eggs. Sometimes it's a modest canned product costing spare change, resting right before your eyes every grocery run. Yet you breeze past it like it holds zero importance. Today, we're arranging 9 canned staples from ought to be in your cupboard to you'll deeply rue skipping when disaster hits. Several entries here may shock you. A few are so unassuming that nearly everybody ignores them. Some don't dazzle on display but become incredibly handy during a blackout, when shops lock up, or when you're simply too drained to prepare food. And the item claiming the peak spot isn't mere survival stock. It's practically a full dinner packed inside one container. Let's dive into number 9. 9. Tinned beets. If you wander past the preserved food aisle at the grocery, you'll almost certainly overlook beets without a second glance. Nobody charges into a store frantic to locate jars of beets. They lack the standout presence of tinned meat. They aren't as homey as canned soup. And they don't spark that same doomsday readiness feeling like rice, legumes, or pasta. But inside an emergency pantry, the greatest hurdle isn't always missing energy intake. It's missing equilibrium. For the initial few days, the icebox still holds crisp produce. You still possess lettuce, carrots, leafy greens, or a handful of items purchased the week prior. Yet after only a short span without electricity, delayed market runs, or tough access to shops, most fresh fare starts deteriorating swiftly. That's precisely when many households glance back at their backup shelf. They've got grains, they've got noodles, they've got tinned seafood, they've got tinned protein, they've got biscuits, but nearly no actual vegetables remain. That's the instant an everyday tin of beets starts becoming extraordinary. A 15-ounce container often sells for roughly $1 to $2 across numerous U.S. grocers. Yet it offers around 3.5 ready-to-consume portions of vegetables. To put it plainly, for the cost of a single soda or a small sack of munchies, you're buying a vegetable serving that sits silently on a ledge for years, demanding no chilling, no scrubbing, no slicing, and no need to ignite the range. That element counts heavily because amid hardship, what drains people isn't solely hunger. It's needing to think excessively about each solitary dish. Beets dissolve part of that burden. You peel back the top, consume them plain, add them onto a mound of rice, pair them alongside small fish, tinned poultry, crackers, or toss them swiftly with a splash of vinegar, salt, and spice. Nothing upscale, just adequate to make a dish feel less arid, less weighty, and less reminiscent of survival rations. From a nourishment standpoint, beets contribute roughage, folate, potassium, and many trace compounds that storage pantries leaning too greatly on starches frequently miss. For anyone past 50, this turns even more noteworthy. When the frame is weary, when hunger wanes, when lingering at the counter too long grows uncomfortable, tender foods that are simple to chew, uncomplicated to swallow, and demand zero cooking become way more prized than their outer look implies. But the genuine muscle of beets isn't solely found on the ingredient panel. It's found in the sensation that the supper remains respectable. A dish of grains with tinned fish can stuff you. Yet place some beets beside it, and that plate instantly carries more hue, more gentleness, is simpler to ingest, and feels less tedious. Following numerous days of consuming mostly arid, salty, or stodgy provisions, merely one portion of tender greens can make the physique feel more looked after. That's a detail lots of individuals fail to plan for. They prep to endure, but neglect prepping to continue consuming day upon day without growing weary, without growing sick of the rations, and without sensing every single plate is identical. For keeping, most tinned beets can sustain fine quality for about 2 to 5 rotations if held in a moisture-free chill spot, distant from harsh sunlight and far from steamy damp zones like a garage in peak heat. Prior to using them, consistently inspect the container. If the tin is bulging, seeping, severely rusted, or deeply creased along the seal, don't gamble on salvaging it. Beets are hardly the most thrilling item to toss into your cart. Yet, amid a scenario where fresh greens have vanished, current is uncertain, cookery is restricted, and each meal starts echoing. A tin of beets costing under a couple of bucks might represent the sole green left on the supper spread. At that stage, it's no longer something to disregard. It's the gap you succeeded in plugging before the moment expired. 8. Tinned pineapple. A peculiar shift happens in most hardships. Folks frequently don't deplete energy stores first. They deplete a feeling of normal rhythm. Within the opening few days, all is still okay. You still possess grains, noodles, and preserved items in the larder. Yet following many cycles of consuming identical provisions, your taste receptors start wearing out. Meals turn repetitive. The entire household consumes less, not owing to scarce food, but because they're purely too tired of tasting it. That's the juncture where a container of pineapple can create a far larger effect than it outwardly seems. A 20-ounce can of pineapple often sits around $1.50 to $3 across many U.S. supermarkets, yet it can produce nearly 4 to 5 helpings of sugary, tender, ready-to-eat fruit. On a routine afternoon, that hardly appears noteworthy. But envision the 5th day following a drawn-out blackout. The bananas have over-matured and then vanished. The final apples vanished days prior. The icebox no longer delivers fresh fruit. That's exactly when a humble can of pineapple can resurrect something many don't notice is absent: vitality. Pineapple offers innate sweetness, a gentle tang, and a radiant taste that exceedingly few other stockpile provisions can deliver. It carries vitamin C, a fair measure of roughage, and notably the capacity to fracture the repetitiveness of meals constructed too heavily around starches, sodium, and weighty-tasting preserved items. Disaster food isn't solely something aiding your survival. It's something aiding you to still wish to consume. A stock cupboard that's full, yet causes the entire family to tire of eating after a single week, is not a sound setup. Pineapple additionally holds a benefit numerous other preserved fruits don't possess. It slices through salty profiles remarkably well. When a plate carries excessive preserved protein, preserved fish, instant pasta, or elevated sodium products, a few morsels of pineapple can soften the mouthfeel. It isn't solely dessert. It's a method to render a heavy-flavored dish feel more agreeable. A can of pineapple can be consumed straight from the container, blended with oats, eaten with cultured milk, employed as a basic treat, or united with preserved fowl and grain to craft a sweet and tangy meal that's gentler to ingest. Even the nectar inside the container is usable if it's fruit packed in juice. You can splash a bit into oats, blended drinks, or water it down to fashion a light refreshment on muggy days. Yet if the container employs syrup that's highly sugared, address it as a flavor enhancer, not a main beverage. When purchasing, if feasible, favor pineapple preserved in pure juice rather than dense syrup. This variation is typically more versatile to deploy, less piercingly sugary, and pairs better when merged with oats, cultured milk, grain, or preserved protein. A frequent error is acquiring a couple of tins, then forgetting them for ages. Tinned pineapple typically holds decent quality for roughly 1 to 2 years, occasionally extended based on the producer and keeping circumstances. Owing to its innate acidity, stash it in a dry, chill location distant from extended elevated temperatures. Following opening the container, should you not polish it off, shift the remainder to a sanitary lidded vessel and chill it if current is still functional. The biggest merit of preserved pineapple isn't in vitamin C or ledge longevity. It's mental. Amid tense periods where plates begin duplicating and individuals are no longer enthusiastic about what they already possess, the recognizable sweet-sour punch of a fruit container can render the whole cycle feel slightly lighter. A can of pineapple won't mend the whole calamity, yet it can resolve a much quieter dilemma: the meal weariness that makes people stop wishing to consume. And inside a lengthy situation, that's a far larger trouble than many realize. Yet if pineapple aids in preserving spirit and ease at meal period, the subsequent entry provides a wholly distinct class of value: the knack to morph the barest foods into dishes that are gentler, simpler to swallow, and way more nourishing than many suspect. 7. Pure tinned pumpkin. Numerous individuals spot preserved pumpkin and instantly picture autumn pastries. That's precisely why this might rank among the most undervalued articles on this whole list. A tin of pure pumpkin isn't solely a baking add-in. It's a substance assisting in morphing arid, basic, and dull provisions into meals that are far softer, moister, and massively simpler to ingest. Envision the 4th day following a major squall, You still possess grains, oats, pasta, crackers, and a few tins of protein. Theoretically, you still possess foodstuff. Yet following countless similar servings all begins to sense dry, weighty, and tough to gulp. Particularly for aging adults. When the physique is drained, the gullet feels parched, and appetite falls. A plate that is overly stiff or overly dry can cause people to eat less even when the larder still holds plenty. That is precisely when a tin of pure pumpkin starts showing its real merit. A 15-ounce tin typically costs around 1.5 to 3 pounds across many grocers, yet it can yield 3 to 4 silkier, denser, and more nourishing servings. You can fold pumpkin into oats to make breakfast less dry, stir it into stock to make a basic soup, or blend it with pasta, spice, or a bit of tinned poultry to add moisture and a rounder mouthfeel. Pure pumpkin differs from many other storable provisions because it does not try to be the center of the plate. It acts more like cooking lubricant, stock, or spice. It helps other foods become better. A dab of pumpkin in gruel can make breakfast silkier. A dab of pumpkin in soup can make supper heartier. Sometimes those small shifts decide whether people keep eating enough or not. Pumpkin provides plenty of vitamin A fiber and some key minerals, but its greatest strength sits beyond the nutrition label. Preserved pumpkin adds silkiness, body, and moisture to a pantry that is often overly dry, overly salty, or overly monotonous. It is not the star of the plate, but what helps distinct elements merge and become easier to swallow. Pumpkin also makes a dish feel more filling without feeling overly heavy inside the gut. When folded into gruel, soup, or oats, it creates a natural body, making the serving feel larger without extra meat or grease. Avoid buying pumpkin pie mix instead of straight pumpkin by checking the packaging carefully. You want pure pumpkin, not pastry filling laced with added sugars, spice mixes, and extra ingredients. A tin of pumpkin will not make a dish feel luxurious, yet when fresh produce dwindles, it can quietly save the whole eating moment. It does not demand attention on the counter yet. In the right scenario, it does what many pricier items cannot. It makes stored food easier to swallow day after day. Tinned clams are small, but they can matter immensely when a crisis lasts too long. They bring vitamin B12, iron, trace minerals, protein, and an ocean taste grains pasta or biscuits cannot replicate. A small can of clams often weighs around 6.5 ounces and costs roughly 2 to 4 pounds. Yet it can supply a very high amount of vitamin B12. Just one portion can provide far more B12 than an adult needs in a full day. For people over 50, this is even more important because the ability to absorb B12 can gradually decline with age. A tin of clams does not look like classic survival food, yet its value lies in nutrient density. You can add clams to dry pasta oil, powdered garlic pepper, and a few drops of citrus to make a meal that feels entirely different from plain noodles. Clams can blend into soup, gruel, grains, tubers, or stock to create deeper flavor. Even the liquid in the tin can boost the taste of a soup or sauce if it is still safe and smells normal. Here is the key wisdom. The most prized provisions are not always those you eat the most. Sometimes they are the ones that elevate what you already have. Tinned clams turn a dry meal into something more complex with protein, minerals, and real sea taste. But do not buy many tins of clams simply because you heard they are nutritious when no one in your household has tried them. Clams have a distinctive smell and taste, so be mindful before stocking up. A single tin of mackerel can give you more protein than most people eat for breakfast, and it costs about 3 quid. I've been building emergency pantries for years, and this is the one tinned fish most people ignore. A 15-ounce tin gives you 60 to 80 grams of protein, plus omega-3s that keep you full for hours. But here's the thing. Mackerel has a bolder flavor than tuna, so buy one tin first to test it. The style and oil makes rice dishes hearty, the tomato sauce version is easy to eat straight, and the water-packed one is lighter. When fresh meat is gone and everyone's tired of tuna, this is what turns rice into an actual meal. When the power goes out and your fridge is already empty, a can of chicken is still sitting on the shelf demanding nothing. I've spent years studying what actually works when the freezer becomes a source of stress instead of a solution. A 12-ounce can runs you about $3 and gives you 50 grams of protein that can stretch across multiple meals. But here's what most people miss. It's not about eating it alone. The real value is how it makes rice, pasta, and soup actually feel like a meal when you've got nothing else to work with. A tin of chicken noodle soup costs less than 3 quid, but it's not about the food being perfect. It's about the food being effortless. Stock, pasta, a bit of chicken, and a meal that needs almost zero preparation. When you're drained, cold, or nursing a headache, a plain bowl of soup is vastly gentler to manage than dry crackers or dense tinned meat. It doesn't just give you calories, it gives you the feeling of being looked after. A bundle of pasta constitutes an element. A can of legumes constitutes an element. Yet tinned bovine stew diverges. It's almost a comprehensive plate. Flesh, greens, stock, and starch are already merged inside the identical vessel. That's the rationale this item secures the peak spot on this rundown. Not owing to it possessing the lengthiest ledge life, not owing to it being the least costly, but owing to it resolving one of the most sizable troubles when a hardship persists longer: sheer depletion. Following numerous taxing rotations, exceedingly few individuals wish to hover in the cookery for spans assembling multiple components together. They desire something simple, swift, and sufficient to cause them to sense they've just consumed an authentic supper. Tinned bovine stew accomplishes that. On occasion, the most significant merit of provisions isn't situated in the energy tally or the count of cycles it can be stored. It lies in trimming the exertion and choices you must undertake when you're already drained. And bovine stew has already completed the bulk of that labor beforehand. It's likewise enormously adaptable. You can devour it straight from the container, devour it alongside bread, ladle it atop grains, blend it with pulped tubers, or insert it into pasta to generate a larger dish. Possessing merely a single can, you already carry a creation vastly nearer to a whole supper than needing to unseal multiple distinct foodstuffs. A familiar blunder numerous households commit is hoarding exclusively ingredients without holding any ready meals. In written form, that larder might appear enormously substantial. Yet when people grow tired, squeezed for moments, or refuse to heat, they typically extend toward the easiest choices. That's when the genuine worth of bovine stew surfaces. Stash it inside a moisture-free, chill location and inspect the state of the container routinely. Should the vessel bulge, seep, or bear grave impairment, toss it instead of gambling. Because in routine existence, a can of bovine stew might not appear distinctive whatsoever. But when circumstances are no longer routine, it can prove the item aiding the entire household in settling down, consuming a proper supper, and sensing they still retain some grasp over the scenario. Readying isn't centered on dwelling in dread. Readying centers on granting yourself expanded options ahead of life abruptly altering. The intriguing facet is the most valuable articles frequently aren't the priciest ones. They're plain, preserved goods. Numerous individuals stride past each day. Their authentic merit solely surfaces when shops shutter early, when blackouts endure for rotations, or when you merely no longer possess adequate vigor to commence from zero. Hopefully, you'll never be forced to lean wholly on the items in today's rundown. Yet should that rotation ever arrive, you'll be tremendously relieved you prepped, whilst all was still effortless to acquire. Now I'm keen to query you. Among these 9 objects today, which would be the initial article you'd insert into your stock larder? If you found this useful, please tap like to help my channel keep growing.